Our world is changing. As educators guide their students into an increasingly diverse global community, the importance of students needing to relate to, study with, and work with people of different linguistic and cultural backgrounds is more critical than ever. World language teachers must ask themselves one crucial question: how can I be more effective and relevant in today's world to help my students develop the skills necessary to succeed? Research suggests that it's not so much what the teacher knows, but what the teacher does in the classroom that maximizes student achievement. The TEL project, or Teacher Effectiveness for Language Learning, represents a new vision for learning a language, a vision driven by standards, principles of proficiency, and performance. TEL offers a unique collection of products and processes to facilitate and support any teacher, allowing him or her to self-assess, peer assess, and work with administrators to set goals and track their progress towards professional growth. The TEL project is shaped by a framework of 7 domains that describe the model world language teacher. Each domain is guided by a single, essential question educators might ask themselves. Teachers can start their exploration of the domains at any point, personalizing TEL's wide variety of free resources. These tools, which honor every individual's experience, provide all teachers with opportunities for growth. TEL is garnering widespread praise throughout the world language community, suggesting that when world language teachers and TEL work together, they can better reach and prepare world language students for success in the real world. Visit telproject.org to learn more and access all our free resources.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, or maybe even already good morning again, depending on when you're joining us. And now you know why we use the hashtag Tell Me More as part of this virtual summit. And it is my goal for the next 30-ish minutes or so to explain to you why we call this the NFLC Virtual Summit. It is organized by the National Foreign Language Synod, but we're also talking about it. It is powered by Pearl, and what does that really mean? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. This is so different than a pre-recorded session. This is totally live. It's kind of like going to a conference and seeing someone present, so it won't be as polished, it won't be as nice. I'll literally be here. You have my doorbell ringing. You'll probably hear somebody cleaning the gutters today. Who knows? But it's also an opportunity for you to ask questions. So I invite you to submit your questions either via the Facebook or YouTube chat. And as they come in, I will try to answer them. So so we're going to talk a little bit about what Powered by Pearl means and why we chose that particular title. So Pearl stands for Professionals in Education, Advancing Research and Language Learning, and we are a Title VI Language Resource Center, part of the National Foreign Language Center. Our mission is to create a common vision for high-quality world language learning and develop new models of professional development and support materials for language educators. So now you know why, of course, the summit is powered by Pearl, because we are looking at developing professional development and then also trying to figure out why does professional development work. We're going to talk a little bit about how can we use strength. We're going to talk about goal setting. We're going to talk about connecting with other teachers. We're going to talk about the importance of sharing, because this, for many teachers, I believe, is the reality. We live, new principal, new superintendent, who knows, but we like to use all these kind of crazy words, and we change them every so often too. Sometimes we change the words, sometimes we change the meaning of the same words, but it really has become a problem. In my mind, we live in an educational buzzword world, and it's driving me crazy. And I'm sure if you're a practicing teacher, it's driving you crazy as well. But has anything really changed? We used to have chalkboards and textbooks and notebooks and tests, and that was the educational model. And many people have deemed that to be bad. So what do we have now? Well, now we have Google Slides and online books and laptops and assessments. But has anything really changed, or have we just changed the words around our conversations, right? Kids used to have test anxiety, and now they have assessment anxiety. But have we actually addressed the issue of why kids are feeling that way? We used to not like our textbooks, and now we don't like our online books. But has anything really changed? So then I have a couple questions for you to just kind of think about. How often do you actually see people teach? For many of us, we have to do it perhaps as part of our initial certification program. Um, but then we don't really see people teach that often. It's gotten a little better in the last couple of years thanks to the COVID pandemic and people opening up their doors and sharing more often. But how often do you really see people teach so you can learn from them? How often do you see people argue about effective teaching? Never online, right? Um, but yeah, so there's a lot of arguments over what is effective teaching, and certainly what does effective language teaching look like. And then, how often do teachers get misinformed feedback? You know, depending on what your evaluation process is, where you're working, what kind of feedback do you really get? Does it actually help you become a better teacher? And I think it's really important to remember, and why things like the summit are so important, right? We can't expect to do it all. You can't do it without learning with and from others. Um, Sometimes a friend of mine, we talk about it and we say, are we actually asking teachers the impossible thing to do in the way we're envisioning effective language learning? And then we also have to remember, it's not that it's impossible, it's just it might be impossible if you don't do it by learning and sharing with others. So, in order to help us with getting better feedback, in order to have perhaps a common language, we really have to define what does effectiveness really mean. And what does effectiveness really mean in terms of language learning? And that's kind of the purpose behind the TEL project, the core of the Tell Me More hashtag. But before I talk about the TEL framework, I need to remind everyone of three core beliefs that support this work. First one, the TEL framework identifies teacher characteristics and behaviors representing the model world language teacher. And it doesn't matter if it's a kindergarten world language teacher, a high school world language teacher, a university world language teacher. It's the model world language teacher. It is the perfect world. It doesn't exist. And that's okay. But it's kind of like the Disneyland of teaching. Perfect parents, perfect students, budget, money is no object. But we also believe that any world language teacher can become the model if the model teacher is defined. So many of us love to watch the Food Network or HGTV. And perhaps your homes don't necessarily look like that, and maybe your food doesn't look exactly like that. But we keep watching because we know that if we see what we think is considered this model house, a model home, or model meal, then we can work towards that model, which is exactly what the third core belief states, that the identified characteristics and behaviors are intended to guide individual teacher growth toward the model. So everything I'm sharing today with you is not about evaluation, although I know there's some people who have figured out how to use that for those purposes, but it's intended to guide individual teacher growth toward the model. So this is truly for you or for your teacher to help you figure out, where do I want to go? Where do I want to get better? And also perhaps, where am I really good at already? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. The framework itself is made up, as you heard in the video, of multiple domains. Each domain is a group of criteria to describe the characteristics and behaviors of an effective teacher within one aspect of teacher effectiveness. You saw in the video, each domain has an essential question, and those are just questions that a teacher should ask themselves as they grow in their own effectiveness. Then each of the domain is divided in multiple criteria. And those criteria provide one answer to the essential question of the domain. How? Well, they do that by describing the characteristics of an effective teacher. And then each of those criteria are divided into subcriteria, and those might be the most important part of the framework because those subcriteria are those observable behaviors, what you can see in a classroom, what you can see in the practice of a teacher, or perhaps what are those necessary steps that somebody has to take in order to become an effective teacher. So you have domain, criteria, and subcriteria. Here you can see the essential question for the environment domain. And these essential questions are not groundbreaking. They're just things that that every educator has to do in order to create an environment for learning. Planning, the learning experience, performance and feedback. How do we actually use performance and feedback to help our students grow? Learning tools, collaboration, and professionalism. And then when you put it all together, you have this framework of 7 domains. There are about 40 criteria and countless subcriteria. Well, you can count them, but there's a lot of them. And then you can also see that each of those domains is represented in the logo. And just a little side note on this logo, it's a circle. One thing is the perfect kind of model, but this is a broken circle because we know it's impossible. But we also know, you can also see in this this image that there are multiple pathways, multiple entryways, showing that every teacher enters this framework in a different way, in a different pathway. So there is not one way. I wish there was a roadmap that could say, if you just do step 1, step 2, all the way through step 10, you will become the perfect teacher. But we know reality is that doesn't exist, that roadmap, and everybody has a different way of experiencing it. Now, if you have seen the TEL framework before, this might resonate. If it's new to you, that's okay as well. But it's been recently updated to present most current thinking, and we really think it's much more aligned to help teachers guide them in their work. So if we take a look, for example, at the planning domain, which just happens to be the largest domain because we know planning is the most important part, and yet I know the part that teachers have the least amount of time for. Let's take a look at one of those criteria. PL4, the teacher plans lessons that allow students to acquire the knowledge and skills needed to meet the performance objective. Well, that's kind of a mouthful and a lot. What does it really mean, and what kind of behaviors would you be able to observe in a teacher's practice that say, okay, the teacher really does exemplify this particular criterion? Well, when you look at the subcriteria, you see 3 concrete steps. First, teacher must set daily learning targets that unpack the performance objectives of the unit. Second, the teacher plans opportunities to assess the students' ability to meet daily learning targets. And then third, the teacher plans the activities that enable students to meet the daily learning targets. So in a real nice way, this is just bringing backward design onto the lesson plan level. But something that we perhaps forget in the daily rush of trying to get a lesson outlined. Talking about learning targets, about assessing students, and about the actual activities. So that's the part about defining effectiveness. Now, defining is fine, that's one thing, but I don't want to just give you a bunch of links of all these statements and then perhaps have you compare yourself to it, and then, because I've done that before and teachers felt horrible afterwards, which is of course the exact opposite of what we're trying to teachers to think about. So we have created perhaps a better tool to help teachers really focus on their strength. So a couple of years ago, I found this rather interesting comment from actually a former student of mine who became a teacher about her professional goals for the year. And yes, of course, I was informed a little bit by by the uh, by the current pandemic situation. But we also know this could have been written 10 years ago, probably very similar. And we know there's often a disconnect between evaluation and professional goals. So there's got to be a better way to set professional goals so that you don't have to experience things like that. And so to that end, we have taken the TEL framework and put it online in a much more interactive way for teachers to access and created what's called Catalyst. We have partnered with another language research center at the University of Oregon called CASTLES, the Center for Applied Second Language Studies. And together we have developed this online platform for teachers. So what can you do with that platform? Well, you can compare your own practice to the criteria of the framework and set some really meaningful professional growth goals. We encourage you on the platform to really identify your strength and perhaps even start with that. What are you really good at? Sometimes we forget about, or perhaps we don't even know what we're really good at. So much in education is focused on the negative, right? So much of a conversation is from a deficit. We're talking about you don't know this, you don't know that, our students don't know this, the teachers aren't doing that, the schools fail at this, and we have got to get better at everything. Just imagine if you had those kind of conversations with other people in your life. They probably wouldn't be inclined to want to grow, right? So just by identifying your strength and building your professional goals off of that would be a valuable practice. Perhaps you're really good at blank, but one of your goals is to continue to be really good at that. Um, Often we just look for the next goal, the next thing, the next district initiative, the next imposed mandate from the chancellor's office, or whatever it happens to be, instead of focusing on what you already were doing really well and figuring out, okay, because you're really good at doing this, what else could I be doing? Or how else can I use what I'm already really good at and then use that to grow in other areas, as opposed to just think, okay, well, I don't do this, but I probably should. So how can I do this? Where's the workshop? Where's the book? Where's the magazine? Where's the blog? Where's the podcast? Mm, Reverse that. Think about again, what are you doing really well? And then use that and use that kind of strength approach to figure out how you can grow as a teacher. As part of the platform, you can also upload evidence from your practice, because it's one thing to say, yeah, I'm really good at, or yeah, I don't really do that. But once you have to actually show me the evidence from your practice, that could be, any kind of documents you have on your computer, videos you've taken from your classes, pictures, links to other files to kind of back up what your claims are. I literally, I had been in a teacher's class, observed her. It was a 90-minute class period. And at the end, I complimented her on the use of the target language. And she said, "Oh, really? I thought I was speaking way too much English and not enough Chinese." Guess what? She didn't say one single English word the entire class. So even though she did a really good job at that, she couldn't even recognize that in herself. Of course, the reverse is true sometimes as well with teachers, where they think they're really good at something. But then when you look at the evidence, perhaps they're not. So in Catalyst, we're asking teachers to actually identify the evidence from your practice. Because that's what I always would like to say when I go to a conference session or when I hear a teacher talk, like, show me. Show me from your practice. I get it. We can talk about it all day long, but where is it from your classroom? Show me your kids or show me you yourself doing what you are talking about. There's also a built-in reflection journal where you can either reflect on some of those pieces of evidence. Here's a video of me doing something really well, and this is what happened that day, and this is why I think it worked that way, or here's a lesson plan that totally bombed, and let me go through the process. We kind of have some guiding questions there, so you can reflect on that, or you can use it just as a true blank journal about anything. It becomes your professional growth journal that you can keep track of online. So all this is designed, of course, to help you grow as an educator. So what might you do with this? Well, that you can cause to use a fantastic feature called groups. And some people have at this point hundreds and hundreds of groups on Catalyst. I forgot, I haven't checked lately, but the last time I checked, it was something like 400 some groups. And these are departments, they're PLCs, they're districts, they're state organizations, whatever it is. And they can really beginning to create a community of practice. One of the nice things of COVID, right? Our communities of practice seem to have expanded. So you could create a group, maybe not just with the teachers in your school or your department, but perhaps with other teachers all around the country or all around the world. And it allows you to have some connections. You can set some common goals. You can have a threaded discussion. There's a video chat feature you can use. Again, it's all designed to have this a community of practice, but not just any community of practice, a community of practice that's focused on effective language teaching. And by wrapping it around the TEL framework, you have some common language you can all use to help get better or to celebrate what you're already doing really well. So it creates what we call this mutual accountability, right? So many language teachers feel like they're the only one, and perhaps you are the only one. Maybe you are a German teacher and there's no other German teacher with 100 miles of you. Or maybe you are a Chinese teacher, or maybe you are a Spanish teacher, but you're in a very remote area. So having this shared virtual space really allows you to have some professional conversation based on evidence instead of just opinions, which is what we seem to have a lot. A lot of our shared virtual space, be that whatever your favorite social media platform happens to be these days, a lot of those conversations are based often on opinions or ideas we've had, but not actually on the evidence from our practice. And it's our hope that through Catalyst, we will change those conversations really based on what's happening in teachers' lives. And so that would be already a question that I would have for you. How might you use groups to I can't talk anymore. How might you use groups in Catalyst to help facilitate your own professional learning? And maybe you already have. So that's the TEL framework, really a way for us to define what a model language teacher looks like. And Catalyst, an online professional growth pattern for any teacher. Oh, did I mention the best part of Catalyst? I had forgotten. It's free. It doesn't cost anything for any teacher. So it's there for you to access. And to sign up, it's actually real simple. If you already have Google account, you can just connect it to your Google account. If not, you can use any email, of course. But you just go, hang on, I forgot. Just go to catalyst.uoregon.edu and sign up for a free account. Okay, so now this is the part of the session where it's live. And if there's any questions about TEL, about Catalyst, about Pearl, I would be more than glad to answer them. If not, we all get a little break before our next live session, which will be at the top of the hour. What we will do at the top of the hour, I'll be joined by our Pearl lead consultant, Laura Terrell, and we will kind of reflect on the many messages we heard this morning and talk about really anything. So that's where you can join the conversation as well. We're going to bring in your questions. It truly is in anything. Okay, then perhaps I'll just wait for the questions until our 1 o'clock Ask Me Anything session. Tell me more, and I hope to see you there.
Bye.